Today, our presentation will be from Anna Zaccardi from from Perry Local School Districts. She teaches PE there. And also on the call is Emily Jordan from ODE. She is one of our SEL specialists, so she will be here as well to answer any questions. So Emily, thank you for joining us. Anna, thank you for joining us. And Tom and Janet are on the call as well from Stark County ESC. And I just want to thank them again for allowing us to partner with them to do these meetups every week. So I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Anna.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be on here today. Happy Wednesday. As Randy had mentioned, I teach at Perry Local Schools. It's my 13th year there. I taught in Dublin City Schools for 9 years as an adaptive phys ed teacher prior to that. I travel to 3 buildings and get to work with 5th graders through 12th graders, which is nice because then I also get to work with a handful of teachers also. Last year, our phys ed department, particularly the couple at Edison Middle School and myself and an elementary teacher, decided to present at Oford. And that was in December, basically when Randy and I had been speaking about these virtual meetups. She asked me if there's anything I'd like to present on, and I just figured the work was already done for this. So I decided that I would go ahead and share some of the information that we put together for this presentation. So let me go ahead and get, hoping you can see my presentation. Are we good, Randy?
Not yet.
1 second.
Present now and then the first box and then hit share.
Hold on a second. I have to hit the present now. Okay. And I'm good. Got it?
Yep, it's starting.
Okay, so as we know, the buzz for a couple years now in education has been social emotional learning. So we decided as a phys ed department that we wanted to kind of tap into that and have our presentation specific to social emotional learning and phys ed, educating the whole student. And we'll get into the details here, but this is Perry Local Schools is in Massillon, Ohio, in Perry Township. There's my name, Anna Zaccardi. Angie Ellis was one of our elementary teachers that helped out. Ross Cochran and Joe Libster were part of the presentation when we presented in December. Down here in the right-hand corner, Tom at the ESC is going to be sending out the presentation. We've made a bit.ly there. If you make your own copy, you can do whatever you want with this presentation. We put a lot of energy into research and a bunch of stuff. I welcome you to take, steal, beg, borrow, do whatever you need to do with this presentation. But if you just make a copy, you can make this yours and tweak it out any way you'd like. But there's the bit.ly down there if you would like to have the presentation. As I mentioned, in December of 19 is when we presented this. So this past week when I was looking back at the presentation, I wanted to note that the original presentation was in December before the COVID pandemic. Some additions and adjustments have been made, but some of the information provided, may be more useful when we're back to quote unquote normal. All of the added COVID related information will be done in this like old gold yellow type of font color. So that way you kind of have an idea, like if you're looking for specific, when it gets to COVID related things, at least you'll have an idea where to find that. The other piece is if anybody has heard the presentation before that was at Oford, you'll know that there were some updates. So I just wanted to make a quick note on that so that you were aware of that. The learning objectives for this presentation was to gain knowledge and a better understanding of this generation and the challenges that come with it. I think we all know that compared to the way we grew up, and depending on if you have kids and how old they are, this generation is its unique group of kids. And there's so much research out there based on why that is. You could sit here and Google all kinds of articles, but we took some of the main articles that we felt were important, and we just want to share some of that knowledge. I think it just empowers us to have a kind of wrap our brain around the importance of knowing why the kids are different nowadays, and what we can do to help them. Also, using that knowledge to better connect to SEL learning and physical education, as early as kindergarten through 12th grade. Okay, so one of the first articles that kind of sparked this interest in doing this research was an article that was stated, "Have smartphones destroyed a generation?" From that article kind of sparked interest in our TBT meetings of, just kind of gaining information and some of the research. So this first slide is just going to kind of give you some basic background information. Again, it's stuff that we know, but if you can refer to a slide and just pull a bunch of information, we felt that this was really valuable information to kind of wrap our brain around what this generation encompasses, and kind of take all the research and the articles that we've done and put it in, just in this slides here. So first we have here is it's the iGen. They're born between 1995 and 2012. It's the first generation to grow up with smartphones, and that's kind of crazy to think nowadays because everybody seems to have them. But, you think about, 10 years ago or whatever, when not everybody had a smartphone, but this generation doesn't know any different. You see little kids, at the grocery store holding, or the restaurants holding their parents' smartphones or the tablets. I mean, this is the first generation that's grew up with the smartphone. Smartphone has radically changed every aspect of teens' lives, from the nature of their interactions to their mental health. And we'll tap into a little bit of that, but just kind of wrapping your brain around, the big picture of what it has done to this generation. These changes affect every household. I felt like this was a pretty good fact too to add, poor, rich, cities, suburbs, small cities, everybody's got them. So it's not just to a certain socioeconomic status. Everybody has an opportunity, and it affects, all of them. The iGen is on the brink of the worst mental health crisis in decades, which can be traced back to use of their phones. Unfortunately, we've had some tough times in Stark County over the last several years, and we've experienced that. And some of them were traced back to, connections with what was happening with the cell phone, and parents taking the cell phones, and kids not being able to cope and handle that situation, and just their addiction to it. Number of teens who get together with their friends has dropped more than 40% from 2000 to 2015. I think they would much rather prefer just to, not all of them, but to sit home and snap with their friends on the couch rather than actually being together and interacting. Parenting styles have changed. Curricula and culture with this generation has changed and has made it more difficult. I think this is a pretty powerful statement too. The twin rise between smartphones and social media has had such a profound impact on the iGen's life that is making them a seriously unhappy generation. That's a pretty bold statement to make, but if you think about all the problems and issues that these kids have, and their constant connection to, having to be connected to the world, is just, it causes a lot of unhappiness. So with that being said, I think it's really important to kind of like take that information. Okay, what do we do with it? Well, that was what we presented in December, and now we have the COVID pandemic. Okay, so this stuff you guys know, but again, I just wanted to put some key points in there. If you ever needed to present or share this where you don't have to come up with the verbiage, it's right here for you. At-home orders for months with little or zero face-to-face social interaction. So we presented this in December, and then 2 or 3 months go by, and then we're faced with the COVID pandemic, and which sends everybody home, and zero to little face-to-face social interaction, which is just devastating for some of our kids. Students learning through their devices on their own, or with parents who are not capable of giving the proper support. We've experienced that in the springtime. Some are still experiencing it now because they're doing virtual. Typical parent stress is heightened due to the pandemic. In addition, expectations and demands have changed, and just the level of stress in the house is just increased for many of our families that of kids we're working with. I mean, we're ones that are in education, and I feel the level of stress that's changed within our house. I can only imagine if I'm not equipped to be able to help my kid or a student that has special needs that needs more attention. Kids of all ages stripped of their activities that involve their social circle. We know what that's about. The sporting, the Girl Scouts, the play practice, all the speech and debate. I mean, everything that was stripped, just so much disappointment. Fortunately, we were in a lead teacher meeting yesterday. Some of that stuff is back, but still that fear of, oh, if someone gets it, our team's going to be out of certain games or tournaments or, there's just still a lot at stake, even though that some of it's taking place. Just that day-to-day emotional, physical, social, mental support of adults, such as counselors, teachers, admin across the board, it just doesn't exist for these kids. And it's just heartbreaking to know that some of them, that's all they may have. And it's unfortunate that that's what's happened. I just put a statement down at the bottom because I think this is kind of a scary thing to think about. Research and data is being collected as we speak on the mental health effects of COVID pandemic. And it's scary to think some of the outcomes that can happen in the next several years. I feel like I'm a pretty positive person. I think there are some positive things when we've sat in these virtual meetings and had conversation with my department about, there are some good that has come out of it, but unfortunately there's still a lot of like, okay, what's really going to happen? And then how is this going to change things? So when you think about some of those things, unhealthy consequences. Okay. We look into this, we have digitally distracted family and friends. You have emotionally unavailable parents. We have the people, how it is when you sit at the dinner table at a family function and you have that one sister-in-law or brother or somebody that doesn't listen to a word you're saying because and I'm like, is this what you do to your kids all night long too? Always connected, endless stimulation, technology babysitters, instant gratification, absence of a dull moment. I feel like that's one of the things as a teacher. Kids will do an assignment or they'll complete a task, and within seconds they're saying, what am I supposed to do now? And I think that's just due to their lack of patience because they constantly are stimulated that I'm like, sit there and exist. Like, I don't mean to be smart, but I'm like, I'm not here to like entertain you. I'm here to teach you. You did your task. Now wait 30 seconds and I'll get to you type of, I don't obviously say those things, but it's amazing how the absence of a dull moment is just difficult for them. And I find that even with my own kid. Lack of clarity, and define limits and guidance. I mean, these are things we know, guys. Sense of entitlement rather than responsibility. Imbalanced nutrition and inadequate sleep. I don't know if you guys felt the same way in the springtime when we're, trying to get kids to turn things in and get things submitted. You're hearing that kids are sleeping all day long because they're doing things all night long. So that inadequate sleep and that lack of guidance. Sedentary indoor lifestyle, immature. This is the thing that really is like this is one article that we read. This is what really triggered this, that the immature social development due to the lack of typical interaction with peers. Okay. So that lack of play, that lack of face-to-face because they do things on their phones, that the typical 15-year-old is functioning at a 13-year-old level in terms of their social development. And I find that with neighbor kids, with kids that I'm teaching, just their social development and their maturity level, unless parents force them into that environment and teach them, a lot of times their social development is so much lower. And that's what research has said because of their, due to the lack of typical interactions, lack of resiliency and reduced coping skills. Okay. Things we know. And then we get into the deep part of it with the vulnerability to teen depression, suicide, and anxiety. Okay. So this is what we believe as a department at Perry Local Schools. So we take all that information, all that knowledge, and we bump it ahead. And we wanted to say, okay, what do we believe? We believe a quality physical education program at any level can help create opportunities for developing not only through the physical, but the mental, social, and emotional. Okay. We feel like it's our responsibility to adjust our ways of teaching in order to nurture the student's development in each area. I feel like that second part is really important because, especially when you've been teaching as long as I have, this is my 22nd year, I understand why people get comfortable and it's easy to go through the motions and teach. But when we find ourselves getting frustrated with, oh, these kids can't handle this and they're struggling with this, it's our responsibility to see the trends of what's happening and what we can do to change how we teach and make them more aware of certain things. To go into a phys ed class and teach a bunch of, athletes how to play a game or certain skills is an easy job as a phys ed teacher. To go in there and entice kids to, be a good teammate and to teach kids that maybe don't like the social interaction piece or don't like physical education, that's more of our responsibility. And I think it's so much more important now than ever to point that out to kids so that they're aware of, like, okay, we just played a game. Well, what happened physically, socially, mentally, and emotionally? And we'll talk about that here as we go through. Social emotional learning, guys, I'm not going to sit here and not necessarily bore you with this, but again, use this as a resource to come back to. We know we talk about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills. If you think about five, and then the responsible decision-making, all of which can be implemented in any level of a PE lesson, okay? They're automatically, that's the perks of being a phys ed teacher. All of these things take place naturally because of the nature of what we teach. So why don't we take time to take 30 seconds and ask them, when we were struggling with this, what could we have done? Or how were we learning through the social, and bring up some of these things. Again, just another slide to kind of refer back to. 5 core skills, broke it down a little bit more. But if we look at these things, know your strengths, your limitations. I tell kids all the time, guys, we're all human beings. We're all hardwired to be connected to each other. But we all have strengths and weaknesses. It's okay. And we'll get into one of their goal setting worksheet. It's okay if you're not good at something. We'll find what you are good at. And when we talk about this stuff, and find a way to balance it out, to gain confidence and to be able to manage and be able to cope with things that are uncomfortable. I think sometimes when we talk about some of this stuff, it's uncomfortable for kids, or it's uncomfortable for us to talk about, but that should be an even more of a reminder of why it's so important. If it's uncomfortable and it was a hard lesson and boy, the kids struggle with it, well, that should be a red flag to say, we need to do more of this. So, peri-local schools, okay? I'm going to give a little blurb because I'm the department chair at the high school. I teach one class there, and I'll talk briefly about that. I also teach at Edison. There is some information, which is a 7th and 8th grade building. There's some information on the elementary. I did not present that part of the elementary. There's quite a few slides, and Angie Ellis is a great resource. She's got a lot of information there. I'm not going to go into the details with that piece because I'm not the one walking in her shoes, but I kept those slides in there. So about, let me think about this. Probably about five or 6 years ago. Let me get to this part. So we're 9 through 12. There's about 1,400 students, semester classes for phys ed. When I first started at Perry about 13 years ago, there was certain classes that were offered. There was just a lot of changes that's happened over 13 years. When I became department chair several years ago, we said, okay, what are our issues here? Obviously, one of the first things that's happened in the last several years is the adoption of the PE waiver, okay? Once every school district jumps on that, we know the list of problems that happens with that. So as we were talking about our issues at the high school and what can we do, I'm one of those people, and there's quite a few in my department that are the same way, that, okay, why are we doing what we're doing? Okay, when I first came to Perry, and I'm not bashing anybody, it's just the world of phys ed has changed. When I first came to Perry, you don't wear tennis shoes one day, you're down to B. You don't wear tennis shoes another day, you're down to C, so on and so forth. You get to DNF, you're back to study hall. Well, that's not how we should be grading in phys ed, and we've made a lot of changes, and there was great teachers there, but it just was a different time, okay? So PE waiver comes in, our numbers go down drastically. We go from 600 and some kids to 200 kids taking PE. Sorry, I had to take a quick drink. Type of students in our PE class remaining to teach, you can imagine, okay? We all walk that journey. We got 200 or less kids in there. They're not the ones that want to be in phys ed, okay? Restructured of staff. We had a lot of changes happening with coaching. So, you know, over the years when our department needed to be looked at and changed, it was just because a lot of changes had happened. It wasn't the same people that were there. So we needed to say, okay, what are our issues and how can we make this better? Study halls were jammed. You got 100 to 300 students in study halls. So here we are. We got all these students sitting in study hall, not talk, and this is when they were allowed to have cell phone, not talking to each other, and they're all got their noses in their devices. Okay, well, what can we do to create a better atmosphere and entice kids to get out of there and socialize with each other? Students' need for movement and socialization was needed more than ever. Okay, and trust me, I was part of these meetings with people, administration and the department, saying, you know, oh, okay, well, there's the problem. What are we going to do to solve this problem? So as we came together as a department, these were some of the things that we put our efforts into trying to solve the problem, okay? We came to identify what our goal was as a department. We know, and a lot of this rating of some of these classes I'll talk about took place the year that we had all those suicides. I'm sitting there walking through the school, seeing kids glued to their phone, you know, obsessing over it or not wanting to talk to each other because it's too uncomfortable. And they're just sitting there. You know, it's like, okay, this is our major problem, and yet we're not doing anything as a department to try to help change it. So we tried to talk about what our goal was as a department at this level. We feel it's our job to entice kids to want to take a PE class, not try to get out of it. So we were trying to outsmart the waiver. What do? We need these kids socializing. We need to make it a fun atmosphere for them to learn and build relationships, okay? We also pushed to get PE approved towards GPA. That was an interesting journey, trying to figure out who in the county, who in the state has it towards. It just seems like across the board it was like hit or miss. I'm like, well, why is it not in our GPA? Well, that's just the way it's always been. Okay, well, I understand when you didn't wear shoes one day and you got a B, why you went one in GPA. But we do so much physical literacy, and we teach the kids so much more than just, did you wear your shoes to PE today? That they should be getting rewarded for their hard work. We committed to restructuring the classes and making changes and adding new classes. You know, I had curriculum saying, well, you're going to have to get surveys of the kids. Okay, well, we'll figure out how to do that. So we surveyed about 750 kids to see what their interests were. We revamped our traditional PE classes, tried to separate that those are a requirement if you're trying to get a PE credit. And then we kind of did a sports PE and a fitness PE just to kind of differ it. And we do that at the middle school level. So kids were familiar and comfortable with that. And then we wrote 3 new electives. You know, I'm right now teaching the cardio walking class. We have a lifetime leisure sport class and a competitive PE. Guys, I didn't reinvent the wheel. You know, I use people like Jake at Green and people in our lead teacher meeting to talk to them about, you know, what are things that are being offered and what can we do to get these kids out of study hall and back enjoying and having fun and taking classes that they can enjoy, and not being glued to their devices. So a lot of people helped, a lot of research done, and last year was the first year that we actually offered those classes. Things are moving in the right direction with that. Unfortunately, this year, well, fortunately, I should say, when they did the scheduling, everybody was a little bit nervous about, you know, because of COVID and some kids are at home, whether we were going to be able to offer those classes. We still offer each one of those classes and still have sections of them. It's a little bit less than we normally would, but that's understandable considering we're down 20%. I just wanted to make sure, just because of COVID, we weren't going to do away with all the 3 years of hard work of getting those classes going. So Edison kind of paved the way in terms of talking about this, not only learning through the physical, but giving the kids a safe environment to learn through the social, you know, the mental and emotional learning too, because we just started a couple years before then. I think we've about 10 years now, we've been doing a sports ed versus the fitness for life class, basically. And I'll kind of talk quickly about this, but I feel like if you give the kids a choice of what PE class that they can choose, 95% of it, guys, you walk in the gym right now, you'll see kids where they're supposed. I teach both the sports and fitness. And my sports ed kids, all those kids in there, they're 7th graders, they're nuts. They get full of energy and they're super competitive and they have a ton of fun. And there isn't that group of kids that stand off to the side and are a safety concern, because those are the sometimes, so those are kids that are taking the fitness for life. So our focus is to highlight that in both classes, they learn the same knowledge, the same physical literacy. So We all focus on learning through the physical, social, mental, and emotional. Okay. The method at which they perform it are different. For example, when we're talking about heart rate or the physical piece of it and talking about heart rate range, you know, sports ed might be doing that in the soccer unit. Fitness might be doing that back in the makeshift classroom fitness room we have when we're doing a circuit class. We all talk about the same knowledge. We just perform it at different means. We create a safe environment to challenge the students. I think those kids feel safe and comfortable. By 7th and 8th grade, they know whether they like team sports or not, okay? And they know, you know, I have some really good athletes even that like to take the fitness class because they don't want to do team sports. And I'll explain the difference between the two classes, but they look for it more as, you know, I just want to work on my individual improvement. Students surround each other with like-minded peers. It just creates a really safe atmosphere. And honestly, I've heard through the counseling department what a huge difference over the years it's made that kids don't come down there trying to get out of PE class because they feel safe and it's a nurturing environment that they, you know, that they chose, and which makes a huge difference. Just real quick, if you want to take a look over this, I just clicked on there. Sports and fitness. Here in the middle are all the lifetime leisure sport and knowledge things and fitness-based activities that we do with both classes. So I would say 60% of the time we're together, and then 40% of the time we branch off. When we do that, fitness works on some of these types of classes back in this little fitness room that we have with 30 and 40-year-old pieces of equipment, but it works. And then it's nothing special we got going on there. It's just, we make it what it is. And then when we branch off, that's when sports ed does their team sports related activities. So when the kids come to us at Edison in the beginning of the school year, this is where we really try to tap into it. You know, they're aware that there's teamwork and there's building friendships and that you gain muscle by exercise, but they don't really wrap their brain around the depth of that until they're in our class. So we always drill the benefits of physical education, okay? Educating the whole person. We're not just in there doing the physical piece. The physical piece is the nature of our class, but all these other things kind of build, you know, and it's like a spider web effect. So we'll say, okay, what's physically, you know, what are the benefits? Oh, the big thing they always say is you're more healthy or more fit. Okay. Well, yeah, but let's get specific. So we kind of give them more specific things that here, when we talk about the physical, gain muscle, you know, maintain or lose weight, lower resting heart rate, all the obvious ones. Okay. Social piece, you know, better communication skills, build friendship, teamwork, cooperation, meet new people, social awareness, you know, more assertiveness. These things happen all day long in our phys ed class. I think we need to do a better job as PE teachers pointing out when that happens. What just happened there that socially took place, you know, and they'll be honest with you. They'll talk about, you know, we did cross the river the other day outside. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, but you give them 4 or 5 pieces of equipment. You put 10 kids in a group. They have to get from one side of the gym to the other. We were outside on the basketball court. And afterwards, we talked about, okay, physically, what had to happen for you to be successful? Well, we had to have, you know, good balance and coordination and strength because there was like a scooter board. They had to pull each other and do different things. Well, socially, well, you had to, you know, communicate with each other. And then you go into the mental, emotional piece. You know, you had to come up with a plan. You know, you couldn't just, you know, you had your kids that just wanted to go off on their own and then they'd leave back 2 pieces of equipment for 10 kids and now they're all yelling at each other. Well, they wanted to talk about that. They're like, yeah, it was frustrating when they took, and I knew you just watched the whole thing evolve, as you can imagine, 7th and 8th graders. So these are the types of things we bring up to them. You know, we did that activity. There was so much going on and we just feel like it's so important to talk about. What did you need to do in order to communicate to be successful? And then we talk about all of these skills or lifetime skills that can be transferred over to a work environment, to develop assertiveness, to be respectful to your coworker, those types of things. Guys, it takes like 3 minutes at the end of the class to reflect on this stuff. And it's really powerful to hear some of their feedback. So we just kind of put together this chart. So something for you to take a look at. Anybody have any questions? Are we doing okay?
Sorry, the microphone is in a different place. Nobody has any questions in the chat box right now.
Okay.
I will let you know if anything jumps on.
Okay, cool. So here, again, here's some other lessons that I have shared, or lessons that I'm going to share. Some of these lessons need to be modified or eliminated during COVID, but I wanted to keep them on there. So a couple years ago, Tiffany, the other ODE consultant, had done an in-service and talked about creating groups at the beginning of the year. So we go ahead and do that. We create groups between 5 and 8 kids. We combine both the sports ed and fitness groups. And, you know, one of the first cooperative activities, I mean, we do, which is funny with the mask now, but, you know, put yourself in birth order without talking. We did that before without the masks, and now with the masks, they don't talk anyways. It's like they got muzzles on. But just making them talking about the nonverbal versus the verbal communication, but we keep them in those groups because we have 7th and 8th graders. We have sports ed and fitness. We want them to get out of their comfort zone. And by the end of that 50-minute lesson of 5 or 6 different things like that, they get pretty rowdy at the end because they feel more comfortable with each other. They're talking with each other. There's one that they have to put and match up a name with their name with an adjective. And then they go into actually doing some physical things like they got 3 pieces of equipment and they have to develop a pattern in a circle, tossing the balls, you know, or beanbag or whatever to each other, but they have to communicate with each other. Again, in the very beginning, they're rolling their eyes, shrugging their shoulders, going to okay, team 1's in this corner, team 2's in that corner. But by the end of the 50 minutes, the reason why they're all loud and active is because they feel more comfortable with each other. So those are the types of things that we do. I did add a cooperative game activity list here. It basically is all the ones that we pull from when we're going to do those kind of days. So there's a bunch of lessons in there that you can choose from. I'm going to kind of zip through this. District-wide Wellness Week we do, and that kind of came from connecting with Fuel Up to Play 60. I don't really follow or their program a lot, but I steal a bunch of ideas from their playbook, which I think is obviously welcomed. But each day that week, there's a bunch of collaboration with different departments, with different kids, groups doing things. And then we just really emphasize wellness as a big picture. And there's a lot of, oh no, what did I do here? Okay, sorry. There's a lot of activities that involve that social piece. Focusing on, you know, the whole big picture of wellness in here. And the reason why I add this too, there's some lesson plans in there. For example, I'm not one to want to teach dance lesson. And I know my daughter loves the dance. She's in all those dance classes and stuff. And I feel like that's one of the areas that I needed to improve professionally. And I was like, okay, I'm not teaching any of this, but I know kids will love this. Make a long story short, at the end of that wellness week, we decided one year, the first year we did it, like, okay, let's pull the screen, put about 15 different line dances up, and we'll turn the lights low and put the disco ball and just have the kids, let's see if this works. It was either going to be an absolute disaster or it was going to be something really good for kids. And I'll be honest with you, it's quite entertaining and one of the coolest things we've done. The way that they're socially interacting and not worrying. I mean, we create the atmosphere that the lights are down low a little bit. I mean, think about when you go to a wedding, when the lighting's bad, you're like, I am not dancing out there. Well, that's kind of what we did with the kids. And the screen was unbelievable because they're so used to looking at a screen that they would get in their little groups and you had all kinds of kids dancing within their groups, laughing and having fun because they're not looking at each other or worried about what anybody's looking at them. They're just staring at the screen dancing. So my point of putting this on here is there's a lot of cooperative social activities that are involved. It's our Wellness Connection Week. This, if you click here, it'll give you a bunch of lessons and ideas that we use during that week. Additional lessons focusing on SEL is, you know, when we do some of the MSTV stuff with the dry erase boards, poster groups, inspirational videos. We just have the kids talk to each other. Inspirational videos, for example, when you get kicked out of the gym because it's the senior luncheon at Edison. Well, what are we going to do? I'm not just going to babysit the kids all day long. So we use those kind of inspirational videos of things you can find, TED Talks and YouTube things, and have the kids talk about, you know, an individual that maybe have a disability, and, you know, what did you learn from that? And having them talk amongst themselves and then doing a reflection in Google Classroom just really gets them thinking and making them more aware of things. You know, any of the other stuff, like I said, Cross the River, Capture the Flag, any of that stuff that allows them to work on some of that cooperative learning. Let me see what we got next. So this is one of the last slides that I will share and talk about. I wanted to add a little bit of what we did in the spring, leading into the fall, and now that we have some kids that are quarantined, because I wanted to kind of update things a little bit. So at home, in school, and the combination. So in the spring, just like everybody else, we were thrown into it, really fearful of what these kids are up against, being home by themselves and not having that connection, that social piece of what we keep talking about. So we decided to do let me share this for you. In Google Classroom, this was our intro. We basically explained that we did a theme for the week. It looked the same. Every day, every Monday was a fitness blender, and I'll show you real quick what this looks like. But Tuesday was physical literacy. We usually taught them something about, you know, something physical related or teamwork related, or we showed a video and then we talked about it and then they had to take a quiz on it. Wednesday ended up being one, both, or all of us doing different activities. We kind of based it on feedback from staff meetings. For example, one day I just took a bunch of the grocery bags that are in abundance and made a ball out of it, because some of our kids don't have anything. And I literally had my 8th grade daughter, well, she was in 7th grade at the time. Okay, let's toss right hand to right hand, left hand to left hand. You know, we had like 30 different skills. That lesson is here. And it just gave the kids an opportunity to see us and interact and not just have some, and trust me, I love all the resources that we found online, but, you know, we can all just Google and find stuff, but when they see us and they seem to enjoy seeing some of those. And then we got feedback from administration that kids are just overwhelmed and stressed. So we did a relaxation, deep breathing, positive thought video. And when I even branched off a little bit, did a random act of kindness just to kind of get off the beaten track. Technology challenge that was, you know, using your apps to track your steps and different things like that. Thursday was a Lifetime Social Day. And again, we tried to do these videos just to kind of give them feedback and get to see our faces. But we added a bunch of resources on there. We wanted them to put their devices down and connect, go do a scavenger hunt with your family, you know, play card game, do a fitness. And each week we would basically highlight one or two for them to see us do it. And then, but we also had a bunch of resources. And then Friday was a student choice day. We also had Padlet where they would post pictures. That was pretty fun to see, kids adding information. And again, we did a video on that, talked to them like, hey guys, we miss seeing you too. Why don't you post some pictures on there to see, you know, all the activities that you actually are doing. So if I go back to, can you see my presentation, or am I still on that?
No, currently we see the people in the presentation.
Let me go.
Try resharing it.
Okay, hold on a second.
If you change tabs, Anna, just look at the top of your screen. It says share this tab. Instead.
Yeah, it didn't do that on that one. Hold on, let me get to that.
There you go.
Okay, let me. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Hold on 1 second. Oh, yeah, I think it is going to slide 13. Yeah? Okay, so like I said, we created the same. We tried to keep it real simple. We created a Google form, and I just want to show you this real quick because I feel like it. So this is what they would get each week. you would see, and I'm only showing this because some people are at home, some people aren't. So they would see the fitness blender video. Tuesday, they would say, okay, this one was whatever the quiz was on knowledge. Wednesday, this was the bag ball lesson and a video of me explaining it. Thursday, we highlighted a lesson. Here's the links to find all that. And then they would go through and just answer the questions for what they did that week. And I'll be honest with you, I would say 70 to 80% of the kids, even if they didn't like the activity, you could tell whether they did it or not. They're like, well, that bag wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be as a ball. And they would like answer feedback. But all they had to do was submit this. And that was the only thing that we had to collect the week. The whole lesson, everything was on here. I'm sharing this because, you know, I know some people are still doing a virtual thing. So I just thought maybe this would be something helpful for you guys to take a look at. And again, we can submit everything we want on Google Classroom, but the more we can still try to have that social connection is what we were trying to do by creating some of the Screencastify lessons as I listed here. If we were to be at home again, and I don't know if that'll happen, we want the kids to give us feedback in terms of them submitting some Flipgrid videos and stuff like that. We never really got to that point, but that was like where we wanted to end up. As the fall, we're 5 days a week, daily PE, semester long, 52-minute classes at the middle school. So let's go back to the SEL. If you go to, this is what we did at the beginning of the year. I kind of developed this worksheet as a trial last year, and then we gave it to all the students this year. And they really seemed, unfortunately, because of their life experiences, they really seemed to give some really honest answers because they didn't have that social piece. So we talk about the benefits of PE. So these were our pre-assessments, things that we did. Physical. We always set physical goals. Well, we talk about learning through the social, the mental, and emotional, okay? So what we had them do, and these are all writing prompts, guys. I told them they didn't have to answer these questions, but these are writing prompts, okay? What are your strengths, okay? Are you shy or are you social? And they went through and looked at this. And then what is a goal that you want to try to improve? And I'll be honest with you, the rawness of the stuff that they wrote in here, it kind of overwhelmed me that I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with all this information now? Because they were pretty honest about what they wrote in these things. So then we go to the mental, emotional, okay? Again, we talk about this stuff. Why don't we make them write goals on this? And it was just, you know, the last 15 minutes of one of our classes after we did some of the physical testing, okay, go grab your Chromebooks. Okay, we talk about the mental being the brain, emotional being the heart, refer to how you feel, okay? How stressed are you? How confident are you? When do you feel most proud of yourself? Again, these are just writing prompts. They would go through and write their strengths and write a goal on what they want to improve. And I honestly haven't referred back to this much, but if I felt like I needed to for a student that wasn't maybe doing well in my class or was struggling in certain aspects, I'd be like, you know what, you told me your strengths are this, and you told me you wanted to work on this, and we're struggling with that. What can we help you with? If I had a kid with behavior problems or felt like they weren't being included or whatever, that maybe you could refer back to this. But the kids were really honest, and I really think it set the tone of what we were expecting from them and what to think about. Do we talk about this stuff every single day? No, but we talk about it on a weekly basis that we want it to become the norm within their class. You know, and then when we were analyzing quizzes and tests and assessments and posting them in Google Classroom, we don't do, you know, but a once a week, maybe every other week thing. But, you know, just because we can't do all the cooperative activities we want to, we still wanted to make sure that we found ways to modify. And again, I feel like the kids have done such an awesome job our first 9 weeks back. It's because they're just so happy to be back and be with their friends that it's been really a great start to the year. We've had a couple of cases of COVID, kids testing positive. So what did we do? We wanted to keep it organized in Google Classroom. You know, we just did a weekly, this week, this is what's happening. Again, instead of attaching some paper for them to do, if we were teaching about heart rate categories that week, us teachers did a quick video. We uploaded to Google Classroom. They would watch the video. They were getting the same knowledge lesson that their peers were getting in class, and they took the same quiz. So we kept it simple for us. It was a 5-question quiz on heart rate, range or categories. and then we would just go from there. But again, we were trying to still socially connect to the kids, that they're not just having to read some article or watch some video. Like, hey guys, this week when you weren't here, you know, we just trying to keep that social connection with them. So these next couple slides are the elementary teacher I spoke of. She's got some great ideas, some great information and resources. Like, again, I'm not going to go into it because it's not my part of the presentation, but I felt like I definitely wanted to keep it on there. A lot of great resources and information that she shared during our presentation. And then I'll end with the last couple. Sorry. So at the end here, we have all the resources. You know, each one of these things you can click on. We just put it all together. The cooperative activity list of all the different activities that we do. Acrosport, it's a packet. That's the packet you can beg, borrow, and steal from. Here's a couple routines. I'm sorry, go back to that one.
Hey, Anna, we are still looking at the goal setting worksheet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So here's the resources. So we have all the things that are embedded into the presentation are all here. These are all, there's lesson plans in the Wellness Week that talk about, you know, connect different social activities. Our cooperative activity list has a bunch of social activities. Our knowledge slides that we use, goal setting worksheet. Here's all the articles that we use to develop that beginning part of the knowledge of this generation and the struggles that kids have. You know, again, just a resource for you to click back to. And then here's some of the worksheets and stuff that our elementary teacher had put together. Pretty cool quote that one of my colleagues found, I think something to kind of reflect on. I think ultimately the reason why we wanted to present on this is because we really try to stress the importance of, yes, it's physical education. Yes, we physically want our kids moving, but it's also our responsibility to talk about when they're moving, when they're socializing, when they're using their brain, how do they feel when they're doing those things. And trust me, we still do your typical PE type of stuff, but when you can end a lesson or two a week, making them be more aware and reflecting on exactly what is being learned and what skills need to be developed in order to be successful socially and all those things. I feel like we're educating the whole being as opposed to just talking about that physical piece. It's one of the best parts about teaching phys ed is we can do all of these things just by the nature of our subject area. So hopefully there's some valuable information in there that people can share out and do whatever you'd like with, and hopefully feel empowered to kind of really want to hammer in some of those important things that we talked about.
Thank you, Anna. That was awesome. And I really like that quote. I also do have Emily Jordan on the line. Emily, if you have anything that you want to say or add to that, and if anybody has any questions, you can drop them in the chat box as we have about 15 minutes left.
Sure. Hi, I'm Emily Jordan. I work in the Office of Integrated Student Supports. I work on mental health in schools and social emotional learning. This was fabulous. Great job, Anna.
Thank you.
I think the only thing I would add is just sharing some of the resources and information from ODE. So I'm going to put in the chat box the link to our social and emotional learning webpage. So there's kind of a wheel there, and it has resources and information at different levels. So whether it's district, classroom, school-wide. But really the bigger thing that I wanted to share was the 5 competencies. So in Ohio, we do have social and emotional learning standards. They're voluntary, they're not required, and they don't have any sort of assessment attached to them. It's really just more there as a guidance, kind of exactly just as Anna and her colleagues were doing, to say, as we are developing programming for our students, how can we make sure that we are also addressing the social and emotional health? How can we incorporate that into more of what we're doing? And so this just sort of outlines what those 5 areas you would want to consider. And so I'm putting that in the chat box right now. But I think exactly like you were saying, Anna, so even that worksheet that you guys were working on, that aligns with a lot of the areas or the 5 competencies. So self-awareness is one of the competencies, and it's having students be able to recognize, how am I feeling? You know, what emotions am I having? And being able to recognize and identify those. So right there, you would be able to say in that activity, well, we're addressing competency A of social emotional learning standards, which is self-awareness. There's also things, there's self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And so the other thing was in that worksheet, Anna talked about kind of recognizing what are your strengths, what are areas that you're struggling in, and focusing on developing a goal. And so that can align with self-management, competency B. So if you did an activity like that, then you can also say, well, through this activity, we've addressed social emotional learning standard competency B, self-management, which is about persevering through challenges. And part of that is identifying, what are you good at? What are areas that you struggle with? How do you persevere through that? How do you create lifelong goals? And so,
Emily, let me piggyback on that. When we first did that worksheet, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm like, I'm not sure how this is going to go. Mm-hmm. I was surprised 2 things. Like I said earlier, the rawness of it, of some of their responses, and also the handful of kids each class that had no clue or understanding of anything we were talking about. And I'm like, wow, these kids have no exposure to this, whether it's within their school day or at home, people talking to them about this kind of stuff, that literally like blank, like, I'm not really sure, I don't really understand this. And that was like a big picture, like, oh, wow, this is really important that these kids, that it could have been one of those things you walk away from like, oh, this didn't work. But I'm like, no. This was a reminder of how much they really need to work on this and talk about these things and work towards that.
Exactly. And that's why we developed the standards, because, we can't assume that, that children are being taught these things in all of their environments. And so we need to make sure that we are taking the time to teach them all of these things, because they're going to need them for success later on in the workforce and in other areas of their lives.
And a lot of the play that used to take place when we were kids, that some of these things are worked on naturally, aren't happening because they're just inside on their devices. So that was like one of the things that we wanted to kind of bring that awareness of, sometimes that free play needs to happen where they're struggling and not managing themselves properly because they don't do it as much as we did as kids.
Definitely. Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to check the chat one more time to see if there's any questions. There's no questions as of right now. Make sure you get the links in the chat box. This is being recorded, so I will have it up on the PE resource page. Check next week to be sure. It takes a few days. I just want to thank Anna again. That was awesome. I really, really liked it. Emily, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us as well. Does anybody have any questions? We have 7 minutes left. And you'll all be getting the slide deck from Anna. Actually, you'll be getting it from the Stark County ESC, but it'll be Anna's deck. We'll all be getting that tomorrow as long as you are on the live. So,
yeah, make sure, just to piggy real quick, Randy, make sure you guys sign in using that tinyurl.com, and that will give me the email addresses from everyone, which you'll get your certificates, but then I'll use that to send out the presentation. And I've already copied the links that Emily provided. I'll include those on the email also, just so that you have them all in one place when they're shared.
Thank you. I did see no questions in the chat, but I did see just compliments, Anna, that it was a really good job.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Ted giving the thumbs up. Yeah, just compliments, no questions right now. I think you and Emily kind of tag teamed and covered everything. So I think we're good. So yeah, I will have this up on the recorded sessions on the PE page. And if there's no other questions, I will give you 6 minutes of your day back. All right. Have a nice day. Thanks, guys.